I had been dodging the "when are you getting married" question at every turn, especially from my friends who had all settled down ages ago. Laura's birthday bash was no exception. The moment I walked into her place, I knew I was in for a night of good-natured ribbing and maybe a few setups. Laura greeted me at the door with a sly smile. "Girl, you're the last free spirit among us. Not for long if I have my way," she teased, handing me a glass of wine. Inside, the room buzzed with our usual crowd, loud and lively. Laura had a knack for throwing great parties, and tonight was no different. I mingled, laughed, and dodged marriage questions like a pro. Then Laura pulled me aside, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Listen, I've got someone I want you to meet. Tom, he's a friend of Mike's. Trust me, okay?" She didn't wait for my answer, just dragged me across the room to where a guy was standing by the window, looking out. Tom turned as we approached. He was sharply dressed, which made him stand out even more. "Tom, this is my friend Chloe I was telling you about," Laura said with a wink. "Hey, Chloe," Tom said, extending his hand. His grip was firm, confident. "Heard a lot about you." "All good things, I promise." "Thanks," I said, trying to keep it cool even though I was already curious about him. "Laura hasn't told me anything about you, so you've got the upper hand." Tom laughed. "Fair enough. I work in finance, live downtown, and according to Mike, I make the best ribs east of the Mississippi." "Ribs, huh? That's quite a claim," I teased back. We hit it off instantly. The conversation flowed easily, from work to hobbies, to our shared love for bad horror movies. Tom was easy to talk to, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking for an escape route at one of these parties. As the night wore on, we found ourselves sitting on the balcony, a bit removed from the chaos inside. "So, why is a catch like you still single?" Tom asked after a lull in our conversation, a playful tone in his voice. I shrugged. "Just haven't met someone who can handle my kind of crazy yet," I said, giving him a challenging look. We talked more about our jobs, and I explained the campaigns I'd worked on, which seemed to genuinely interest him. It was refreshing to talk to someone who wasn't just trying to nod along, but actually understood the nuances of creative work. As the party started winding down, Laura found us again. "I'm not saying I told you so, but..." She trailed off, giving us a knowing look. Tom and I exchanged numbers, and as I left, he called after me. "Hey, don't be a stranger, okay? Let's catch a movie sometime. Maybe one of those terrible horror films?" "Sounds like a plan," I called back, grinning. Driving home, I couldn't help but feel like maybe, just maybe, Laura's matchmaking hadn't been such a bad thing after all. The year flew by faster than I thought possible, and before I knew it, it was my wedding day. I woke up feeling like I was in some kind of surreal bubble. Getting married wasn't something I'd put much thought into until I met Tom, and suddenly here I was, about to walk down the aisle. As my bridesmaids hustled around the room, fixing their makeup and adjusting their dresses, I stood in front of the mirror in my simple yet elegant wedding dress. Laura barged in, holding 2 cups of coffee, her hair half done. "Drink up, you're gonna need it," she said, thrusting a cup into my hand. "You look a bit pale, Chloe. Nervous?" "A bit," I admitted, taking a long sip. "Feels like I'm stepping into someone else's life, you know?" Laura chuckled. "That's normal. Just wait till you see Tom at the altar. You'll know it's your life, all right." The ceremony was a blur. I walked down the aisle, my dad beside me, cracking jokes to help me keep it together. "Remember, you can always run. I've got the car ready," he whispered as we approached the altar, earning him a sharp elbow jab from me. Tom looked stunned as I approached, his eyes never leaving mine. I couldn't help but smile, my nerves melting away under his gaze. We exchanged vows, his voice steady and sure, mine slightly trembling. "Do you, Tom, take this lovably stubborn woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" the officiant asked, a twinkle in his eye. "I do," Tom replied, loud and clear. "And do you, Chloe?" He turned to me. "Take this hopelessly disorganized man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" I do, I managed, eliciting a few chuckles from the crowd. The reception was loud and lively. Our friends and family mingled, danced, and toasted to our future. Tom and I made our rounds, thanking everyone for coming. When we finally had a moment to ourselves, Tom pulled me close, whispering in my ear. "See? Not so bad, marrying me, right?" "Not yet," I teased. "Ask me again after the honeymoon." We both laughed, and he kissed me, the kind of kiss that made me forget we had an audience. As the night drew on, Tom's mom, Marilyn, came over, her eyes a bit teary. "I'm so happy for you too. Really, I am," she said, pulling me into a hug. It felt warm, genuine. "Thank you," I said, surprised by the sudden emotion. "I'm really glad to be part of your family." She smiled, then held my hands in hers. "Take care of my boy, will you? He needs someone tough like you." As the night ended, we drove off to our honeymoon, the car decorated with cans and a "just married" sign fluttering in the breeze. The future was uncertain, but I was ready to face it, as long as it was with Tom. After the whirlwind of the wedding, reality crashed back when Tom and I started talking about our living situation. He had set his sights on a swanky apartment in one of the city's most elite complexes. "Chloe, you should see this place," he gushed one evening as we browsed listings. "Top floor, killer view, and a balcony that's practically another room." I scrolled through the photos on the tablet, my eyebrows climbing higher with each swipe. "Tom, this place is gorgeous, but the rent's outrageous. Why don't we look at something a bit more reasonable?" He flicked away my concerns with a wave of his hand. "Come on, Chloe, we can afford it if we tighten up elsewhere. This is about setting a standard, living the life we deserve." Despite my reservations, we ended up in the luxury apartment with a rent that made me wince every time I wrote the check. We agreed I'd handle the rent, and Tom would take care of everything else. It seemed fair, if a bit skewed, but love made it easy to say yes. The first few weeks were like living in a magazine spread. I loved the space, but each rent payment was a reminder of our differing views on money. Tom's tastes leaned ever towards the extravagant. Adding to the tension, I noticed a change in his mom's behavior towards me. Where once she had been warm, now there was a coolness, a distance. She declined invitations to visit and didn't extend any of her own. It bothered me enough to bring it up to Tom one night as we cleaned up after dinner. "Tom, has your mom said anything about me lately?" I asked, watching his expression. He paused, a plate halfway to the dishwasher. "Nah, she's probably just being weird. Maternal jealousy or something." "Jealousy? Of what?" I pushed, not satisfied with the brush off. He shrugged, looking uncomfortable. "You know how it is. You're the new woman in my life. Give it time." But time didn't improve things. If anything, the distance grew, and soon, I felt it between Tom and me as well. His once casual elegance shifted into a constant showcase. He spent considerable time and money on his appearance, making remarks about how I dressed. "You know, Chloe, maybe you should see a stylist," he suggested one evening as we prepared for a night out with some of his work colleagues. I looked down at my outfit, simple and comfortable, then back up at him. "What's wrong with how I dress?" He sighed, as if explaining something obvious to a child. "It's just a bit rustic. You could spice it up. Impress a bit." I bristled. "I'm not here to impress anyone, Tom. I like my clothes. They're me. Urban, simple, and comfy." He shook his head, clearly frustrated. "It's about fitting in, Chloe. Looking the part." That night, as we mingled among Tom's stylish colleagues, the air between us was tense. I caught him several times looking at me, his gaze critical. It stung, and the night ended with us driving home in silence. The glossy image of our life that Tom curated for social media was miles apart from the reality that simmered between us. Every picture-perfect post was a stark contrast to the growing discontent I felt. As weeks turned into months, Tom's attitude shifted from mildly annoying to outright disrespectful. One evening, after returning from another high society party where Tom had criticized my dress in front of a group of strangers, I couldn't hold back any longer. We were barely through the door when I spun around to face him. "Tom, we need to talk. This can't go on," I said, my voice firm yet weary from the evening's facade. He raised an eyebrow, his expression a mix of amusement and challenge. "What's the problem now, Chloe? Your dress wasn't up to par again?" I clenched my fists, trying to keep my composure. "It's not just the dress. It's everything. You belittle me, in public and at home. You critique everything I do, from how I dress to the gifts I give you. Why?" Tom chuckled, a sound that grated on my nerves. "Chloe, you just don't get it, do you? We're not in your little quaint world anymore. We're playing in the big leagues now. You need to step up or step aside. Maybe you should just embrace being a housewife, like my mother did." The suggestion stung, the arrogance in his voice making my blood boil. "A housewife? Really, Tom? And who's going to pay for this lavish lifestyle? You want me to stop working, but who will cover the rent for this palace you've chosen?" He paused, momentarily caught off guard by my rebuttal. "Well, I mean, we would figure it out." "Figure it out? Just like you've figured out how to spend money on every luxury except the things that matter? You're more concerned with looking rich than actually being a partner in this marriage," I shot back. Tom's face hardened. "You just don't understand the importance of appearances, Chloe. If you did, you'd spend more time at the spa, or maybe get some work done. Look around, everyone in our circle does it." "I'm not everyone. And I'm not wasting money on spas or plastic surgery just to fit into your circle," I argued, my frustration reaching its peak. The conversation ended there, but the tension lingered like a thick fog. Over the next few weeks, Tom's obsession with maintaining a facade of wealth escalated. One Saturday, as we walked through the underground parking lot filled with high-end cars, Tom stopped to pose in front of a particularly flashy model. "Here, take a picture," he commanded, handing me his phone. I took the phone, snapping the photo as he posed with a practiced smile. "Going to caption this one about how hard work pays off?" I asked dryly. "Exactly," he replied, not catching the sarcasm. "It's all about the image, Chloe. That's what gets you places." Tom was living for the approval of his followers, while I was just looking for sincerity in our marriage. The realization was sobering, and for the first time, I began to seriously question our future together. Lately, Tom's work hours stretched longer into the evenings, his presence at home becoming more the exception than the rule. I tried to shrug it off as dedication, ambition, something commendable. But the niggle of doubt was relentless, especially as Valentine's Day approached. A week before the holiday, while searching for an old photo album in our closet, my fingers brushed against a sleek, unfamiliar package tucked behind his hanging suits. Curiosity piqued, I pulled it out, a beautifully wrapped box from a high-end lingerie brand. My heart skipped. Perhaps Tom remembered how I always joked about spicing things up. When Valentine's Day dawned, I awoke with a flutter of excitement. But as we exchanged gifts over a hurried breakfast, the only thing Tom handed me was a fitness bracelet. "Track your workouts better," he said with a casual peck on the cheek. No mention of the lingerie, no sign of indulgent silk or lace. By the time he left for work, the lingerie had disappeared from its hiding spot. My mind raced with possibilities, none pleasant. Was there someone else? Was that why he'd been so distant? By evening, my decision was made. I called a private detective, a number I got from a friend who had gone through something similar. "I just need to know," I told him, my voice a mix of fear and resolve. 2 weeks later, I met the detective at a coffee shop downtown. His face was grim as he slid an envelope across the table. "You were right to call," he said softly. "I think this will answer your questions." Inside, I found evidence of dinners, late-night escapades, and receipts for gifts that certainly weren't for me. My heart sank, but I tucked the envelope away. Knowledge was power, and I needed a plan. That Friday, Tom staggered in late, reeking of booze. "Guess what, Chloe," he slurred, barely able to stand straight. "I got promoted. Big raise. We're celebrating tomorrow, my parents are coming over." He grinned, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. This was it. This was the moment to confront him. But not tonight. Tomorrow, with his parents as witnesses, would be perfect. I forced a smile. "That's amazing, babe. We should definitely celebrate." As he stumbled off to bed, I sat in the living room, the weight of the envelope in my purse feeling like a ton. The evidence of his betrayal was palpable, the photos and receipts a mosaic of deceit. I rehearsed what I would say 1,000 times, each scenario different, each outcome uncertain. Morning light crept through the curtains too soon, and I rose, weary but resolved. Today would mark the end of one chapter and, hopefully, the beginning of something new, something real and honest. As I brewed coffee and set the table for the impending brunch, my hands were steady. The heartache had crystallized into a fierce resolve. Tom's parents did not take long to wait. His mother, Marilyn, had always given me the cold shoulder, but today her disdain was palpable. She eyed me over her teacup with a sneer as they arrived, bearing a gift for Tom. "Here, son," Marilyn said, handing over a beautifully wrapped package. "We thought you'd appreciate this." Tom unwrapped the gift, a sleek notebook embossed with his initials in gold. "Wow, this is classy. Thanks, Mom, Dad, you guys really know what I like," he beamed, clearly pleased. The atmosphere was strained as we sat down. Tom was oblivious to the undercurrents, chatting away about his new role at work. I could barely keep my composure, knowing what was coming. As the small talk ebbed, I saw my opening. I handed Tom a smaller, plainly wrapped package. "I got something for you too," I said, my voice steady. He weighed it in his hand, his smirk telling me he expected something substantial. "Hope it's not another one of your quirky gifts, Chloe," he laughed, tossing the package into the trash without opening it. "You do have terrible taste sometimes." Even Marilyn gasped, her usual frostiness towards me briefly turning to shock. "Thomas," she exclaimed. "That's no way to treat a gift from your wife." But I just smiled, the calm before the storm. "Why don't you take a look? I think you'll find it's quite fitting." Curiosity piqued, and perhaps hoping for an expensive gift, Tom retrieved the package from the bin and tore it open. The room fell silent as he unfolded the contents, photographs and receipts, the evidence of his infidelity laid bare. His father, George, peered over, his expression turning from confusion to anger. "Tom, what is this? Explain yourself." Tom's eyes darted around, seeking an ally, but finding none. It's not what it looks like," he began, but the receipts in his hand told a different story. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said quietly, the weight of months of deception lifting from my shoulders. "Tom has been cheating on me. These photos and receipts are proof of that." Marilyn, ever the matriarch, took charge, her voice icy. "We need to discuss this. Now." Tom tried to defend himself, his words a jumble of excuses and blame. "Chloe never understood me. She didn't give me what I needed. It's not all my fault." Marilyn turned to me, her eyes softer than I had ever seen. "Chloe, I'm so sorry. I didn't know this was happening. You don't deserve this. We will support whatever decision you make." The words were surreal, coming from her. "Thank you," I managed. "I think it's clear what needs to happen. We need to get a divorce." The room was heavy with disappointment and betrayal as Tom's parents digested the news. George spoke up, his voice heavy. "Son, you've not only dishonored your wife, but disgraced us as well." "I need some time," I said, my voice firm, despite the chaos. "I'll be in the bedroom packing some things." Each item I placed in the suitcase felt like I was closing a chapter of my life, one filled with deceit and misplaced trust. When I was almost done, I stood at the threshold of the bedroom, suitcase in hand, and addressed everyone still gathered in the living room. "From today, Tom will be responsible for the rent of these apartments, not me," I declared, my voice echoing with a mixture of relief and resolve. Tom's face turned ashen, his earlier bravado evaporating in the face of reality. Marilyn looked at him with widened eyes. You haven't been paying the rent, Thomas? Before he could respond, I cut in. I paid every single month, along with groceries and most other bills. Marilyn's gaze shifted between Tom and me, a realization dawning on her. All this time, you lied about Chloe? We thought she was just spending your money. Her voice broke with the weight of her words. I work at the advertising agency, and I have a good salary, I said, looking directly at Marilyn, who seemed genuinely taken aback. It's Tom who has been reckless with money. At that, Marilyn's composure shattered. She stepped forward, her eyes blazing as she faced her son. You ungrateful, spoiled fool, she yelled, her voice trembling with anger and hurt. Chloe is nothing but hardworking and kind, and you have failed her. George joined in, his tone harsh and unforgiving. Foolish boy. We didn't raise you to be this way. I should have been stricter with you when you were younger. The room was charged with emotion, the air thick with the bitter scent of disillusionment. While Tom's parents continued to berate Tom, I zipped up my suitcase and moved towards the door. The finality of my actions was liberating, yet heavy with sorrow. As I reached the doorway, George called out to me. Chloe, we're so sorry. We didn't know. We're going to make sure he learns from this. We might even need to reconsider his inheritance if this is how he conducts himself. I stepped out of the apartment, the door closing behind me with a soft click that seemed to resonate with finality. The cool corridor outside was a stark contrast to the heated atmosphere I'd left behind. Life after the divorce felt like stepping out from under a heavy shadow. I moved into a smaller, more modest apartment, the kind that felt cozy rather than cavernous. The walls didn't echo with past arguments or the hollow pretense of a life spun for social media. Here, I could breathe, decorate with simple tastes, and sleep soundly knowing I was living within my means. Since the split, I received monetary compensation from Tom and his mistress, a bitter reminder of their deceit that somehow felt like cold comfort. It was money I used judiciously, saving for a future that was all mine to shape. At work, I threw myself into new projects, earning a well-deserved promotion that came with a better office with a view of the city skyline that felt earned, not purchased. Despite everything, life settled into a rhythm that was quietly fulfilling. One quiet Saturday, as I was watering my plants, a new hobby that filled my home with greenery and life, my phone rang. It was Marilyn, Tom's mother. Our relationship had shifted surprisingly since the divorce, bound strangely by the shared betrayal of the man we both thought we knew. Chloe, dear, how are you? Her voice was warm, a stark contrast to the chill it used to carry. Hi, Marilyn. I'm good, thanks. Just enjoying a quiet weekend. How about you? There was a sigh, a rustle of papers. Marilyn was always more comfortable multitasking. It's been hard, but Tom's learned a lot of hard lessons lately. His mistress left him after she realized the lifestyle he promised was just a facade. I wasn't surprised. People show their true colors in tough times. I hope he finds his way back to something real. Yes, I hope so too, she agreed. Chloe, would you want to meet for coffee sometime? I'd love to keep in touch. We started meeting occasionally, finding common ground over cups of steaming coffee. Marilyn shared tales of her gardening club, and I talked about my latest projects at work. It was strangely healing, building something new from the ruins of something so broken. As I moved forward, my goals became clearer. I was saving up, hoping to buy my own place outright. The dream of a mortgage, a place truly mine, was close enough to make my heart race with excitement and fear all at once. On one such coffee date, as autumn painted the city in hues of orange and gold, Marilyn and I sat in a quaint cafe, its windows fogged slightly by the crisp air. You've done well for yourself, Chloe, Marilyn said, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. You're really an inspiration. I'm just living my life, Marilyn. No need to impress anyone but myself now, I replied, taking a sip of my latte. That's exactly why you're inspiring. After everything, you're still you. Just happier, stronger. I thought about her words. Stronger, yes. Happier, definitely. The freedom to be myself, to build a life not defined by someone else's standards, was liberating. As we chatted about mundane things, the future felt less daunting. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving, fueled by my own accomplishments and the simple pleasures of a life lived authentically.